Hello and welcome to What the Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Welcome to day 1412. Attorney General William Barr said the Justice Department has, quote, not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election, end quote, undercutting Trump's baseless claims of widespread voting irregularities. Barr suggested that the FBI and Justice Department looked into some fraud claims, but they, quote, haven't seen anything to substantiate, end quote, any claim that, quote, machines were programmed essentially to skew the election results, end quote. Last month, Barr authorized U.S. attorneys to pursue any substantial allegations of voting irregularities if they existed before the 2020 presidential election was certified, despite no evidence of widespread fraud at the time. Meanwhile, Trump's political operation has raised between $150 million and $170 million since Election Day, using misleading appeals about voter fraud to fund failed attempts to overturn the results of the election. The first 75% of every contribution goes to a new political action committee that Trump set up in mid-November, called Save America, which could be used on political activities after Trump leaves office. The other 25% is directed to the Republican National Committee. The campaign has sent about 500 post-election fundraising pitches to donors. Meanwhile, an attorney for the Trump campaign called for the former head of U.S. cybersecurity to be executed for saying that the election was the, quote, most secure in U.S. history, end quote. Krebs was fired after he rejected Trump's unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud. Trump's attorney Joe diGenova, however, said that, quote, anybody who thinks the election went well, like that idiot Krebs, that guy is a Class A moron, he should be drawn and quartered, taken out at dawn and shot, end quote. Krebs suggested that he might take legal action, calling diGenova's comments, quote, more dangerous language, more dangerous behavior, end quote. diGenova tried to walk back his remarks later, saying it was, quote, obvious that my remarks were sarcastic and made in jest, end quote. Attorney General William Barr appointed U.S. Attorney John Durham as special counsel to continue investigating the origins of the FBI's 2016 probe into possible coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. Barr made the appointment on October 19th and kept it secret so as not to interfere with the election. In 2019, Barr appointed Durham to investigate the FBI's justification for the investigation, which later became Robert Mueller's probe into Russian interference. That investigation has only netted one criminal charge, a low-level FBI lawyer who pleaded guilty to altering a surveillance application on Carter Page. A special counsel can only be fired by the Attorney General, and only for specific reasons like misconduct, dereliction of duty, or conflict of interest, which must be documented in writing. Meanwhile, Trump and Rudy Giuliani discussed a pardon preempting any charge or conviction before Trump leaves office. Giuliani's been under investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York for more than a year, reportedly focused on his actions in Ukraine, where he tried to dig up dirt about the Bidens. A Giuliani spokesperson said that Trump's personal attorney, quote, cannot comment on any discussions that he has with his client, end quote. Giuliani tweeted, quote, fake news NYT lies again, never had the discussion they falsely attribute to an anonymous source. Hard to keep up with all their lies, end quote. While rare, it is legal for a president to preemptively pardon people for federal crimes before they've been charged. Moving on, scientists at the CDC found evidence that the coronavirus was present in the United States weeks earlier than previously thought. While COVID-19 was first identified in Wuhan, China in December 2019, it wasn't until about January 20th that the first confirmed COVID-19 case was identified in the U.S. Testing of 7,389 blood donations collected by the American Red Cross from residents in 9 states identified 106 infections in samples collected between December 13th and January 17th. Meanwhile, Trump's coronavirus advisor Dr. Scott Atlas resigned. Atlas was a radiologist with no experience in immunology who repeatedly made comments that were at odds with public health experts, including the experts on Trump's coronavirus task force. Atlas fought against lockdowns, downplayed the seriousness of the virus, questioned the efficacy of masks, and urged the White House to embrace a strategy of herd immunity. Trump invited him to join the task force in August after seeing him on Fox News. Moving on, Biden formally introduced his 6-person economic team, saying, quote, "help is on the way," end quote. Biden tapped Janet Yellen as Treasury Secretary and nominated former Obama economics advisor Adewale Adeyemo as Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. Neera Tanden will lead the Office of Management and Budget, and Cecilia Rouse will chair the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Jared Bernstein and Heather Boucher will join Rouse as council members. Progressive Democrats and Republicans have both expressed opposition to Tanden over her ties to corporate and establishment political leaders. Since 2011, Tanden has been CEO of the Center for American Progress, a liberal think tank, and its political arm, the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Biden says Congress should come together to pass a robust aid package, and he repeated his call for immediate relief in the current lame duck period, pledging a, quote, "recovery for everybody," end quote. And finally, a bipartisan group of senators introduced a coronavirus aid proposal worth about $908 billion, which Mitch McConnell immediately rejected. The bipartisan compromise, which was described as a bridge, would provide $300 a week in federal unemployment benefits for roughly 4 months, $160 billion in funding for state and local governments, as well as a temporary moratorium on some coronavirus-related lawsuits against companies. McConnell said that he wants to pass a targeted relief bill instead because, quote, "we just don't have time to waste time," end quote. Congress needs to approve funding legislation by December 11th to avoid a government shutdown.
That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.